William is a great teacher. He draws from the Alice Bailey tradition, the esoteric understanding that came through in the early part of last century, and takes us into our higher minds. So this is another time for close attention. Just listen. I've learnt so much from him, and I know that you will too, as we look now at the planetary scale of things and what that says for us as a collective, what it says for us as individuals, what it's saying for our planet as a whole. Matthew Fox will go on and pick up that theme a bit this evening, looking at the wider scale of things. So we're really beginning to move our attention outwards, engage ourselves in a different way. And I so warmly welcome you, William. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's so good to be here. Findhorn is a place that I got to visit 29 years ago, and to finally come back after one Saturn cycle, 29 years, feels pretty good to me, because in my own chart, Saturn is my ruling planet, so somehow that just felt good. So my topic today is having to do with spiritual purpose in our lives, and the idea of searching for it. But I also want to put it into the larger context of understanding how the esoteric philosophy views the world itself, the current times we're living in, to provide the context for understanding how you must or try to apply your purpose. Because really, from a certain perspective, your soul's purpose is deeply woven into the circumstances of the human condition at this time. So I'm going to lay out some fundamental principles for you first, and then I'm going to go into some ideas or considerations about your specific type of purpose within that context. Now, one of the things I want to begin with is I want to share with you an understanding that we are going through an enormous transition that is it is not just an astrological transition. We talk about that often. We're moving from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius, which many of you are familiar with. But we're also going through a transition into what is called the seventh ray age. We're moving from a sixth ray age to a seventh ray age, and these two transitions are happening simultaneously. We are coming to a point where humanity itself is approaching what in this philosophy is called the first initiation. And the first initiation in the ancient literature is called the birth of the Christ within the heart. And so it's very fitting to bring this forward to you, given the fact that this is a conference all about the Christ. And to begin that, I'd like to first share with you a principle, because I want to give you a bigger picture perspective. You know, it is said in the esoteric philosophy that context gives meaning to content. Big picture gives you a container to understand little picture. There's a principle in this philosophy called hylozoism that I want to highlight for you. And it has two definitions. The first definition is this, that because this philosophy will say that in the ultimate sense, there's only one thing, one living principle, one beingness. Call it God, call it Brahma, call it universal intelligence. But that singularity of life is all that there really is. And that one life, for reasons we can't fathom, has incarnated itself in and as cosmos. The one becoming the many. The one becoming the many. And so, in that extension of the one into the many, at every level of that extension, from the highest to the lowest, there's expression of consciousness of some sort. Now, if that is, so back to hylozoism, the first definition is this, that in the ultimate sense there's no such thing as inorganic anything. Because if really it's all one thing, one life, then how could anything escape its embrace? Even the stones you walk on must have the element of livingness in it if it's all one life, all one expression of life. So that's definition number one. Definition number two is actually the one that is more pertinent to our conversation today, and that is this, that every unit of life is a cell nested within a greater type of life. Every unit of life is a cell within a greater life. So to highlight that, let us use a simple example. If I take a cell that's in my hand, that cell, from the esoteric point of view, is considered an entity, a being. It has consciousness. Infinitesimal, yes, but it's still consciousness. And yet, it's just a cell within a larger living system called me. But I'm just a cell, and you're just cells within a larger entity called humanity. And from the esoteric point of view, humanity is a being, a single entity. And you and I are cells within its livingness. And humanity is just a unit of consciousness within a vaster entity that we call the planetary logos, the entity that ensouls the whole planet, which is a god to us. And that entity is expressing itself through and as the kingdoms of nature. And every kingdom of nature is just a layer of its manifested consciousness. And the human kingdom is just one of those layers. In fact, the human kingdom is not just a layer, but it's a chakra. We are given to understand in the ancient esoteric philosophy that the entire human kingdom is the throat chakra vibration to that entity. I'd like you to think about that for a minute. Think about that the entire collective consciousness of humanity is this vibration to that entity. To me, that's a staggering thought. But if that's the case, then one has to ask the question, what is the function of a throat chakra? And the throat chakra is the great center of divine ideation, the great center of creative expression. So what does that say about humanity's role in this larger context? It means that humanity is the outlet. As a kingdom of nature, we are the outlet of the Logos' creative expression. And that's why really everyone's purpose, in the ultimate sense, is to be a creative agent on behalf of that greater life. Now, I'm going to share with you in a bit that there are different categories of human souls that manifest or seek to manifest that creativity in different ways. But in a broad sense, it's all about being that throat center. Now, as I mentioned, humanity is a single entity, and it constitutionally is the same as an individual. You see, you and I, we have a soul and a personality. We have a higher nature and a lower nature. In fact, inside every one of us, there's really two of us, if we're really honest about it. Actually, I always say to myself, you know, if you always, when you're looking at life and making decisions, always ask yourself the question, which one of me is looking now? That's really important. Which one of me? But, and in this philosophy, it's understood that the soul, which is called the causal body, the container deep within you that holds the sum total of the wisdom that you have garnered over thousands of lives, and also it holds the quality of Christ-like love, that soul in you is wanting to transform that personality. It wants to infuse that personality and transform that personality so that it becomes a rightful servant on its behalf. Because that's the destiny of the personality in each of us. What is it? Ultimately, it's just an instrument. It's just an instrument that is available to your higher self to make contact with the outer world. And that personality has three parts to it. It has a mental part to it, an emotional part to it, and a physical part to it. It's sometimes called the threefold instrument, the threefold personality. But the problem is that as incarnation takes place, that personality, we begin to identify with that personality, and we begin to think we are our thoughts, feelings, and physical sensations. So that personality begins to think it's an independent agent. And the irony is, it's really just an appendage. Really, but it thinks it's independent. In a way, the soul's journey is to transform that personality to realize it's just an appendage. And that the soul wants to infuse itself into that personality. And when there's complete soul personality fusion, as we call it, that's called transfiguration, the transfiguration. It corresponds in this philosophy to what is called the third initiation. Now, so for most of us in this room, we have partial soul infusion. Part of the soul has infused itself into the personality, and that part is called the soul-infused personality. And there's another part that hasn't been infused yet. The part that has been infused, that's the part of your personality that says, I sense that higher truth. I sense that higher thing that's speaking to me. And I'm going to trust it. I'm going to trust it. But the non-infused portion of the personality, that's the part that says, no way. Let ambition rule and the door stand wide. Or it says, not yet. It could be saying that. Not yet. I'm bringing this up to you because the degree to which there is infusion, how much infusion is in your system, will define the measure of which you will be able to sense your own spiritual purpose with accuracy. But it's also having to do with what the world is happening. Because, as I said, the world is coming to a place where it's approaching the first initiation, which is called the birth of the Christ within the heart. But the first initiation is also a measure of a certain measure of infusion. And one of the most important concepts to understand about the journey is this, that crisis is a prelude to all initiations. Crisis is a prelude to all major expansions of consciousness. In the ancient literature, they often call it the burning ground. The burning ground. You have to walk across hot coals. But if we're talking, that's true with an individual, but it's true collectively too. And as humanity is approaching this first initiation, collectively we have to walk across a burning ground. And that's what's happening today. And the issues that we face, whether it's the environmental issue, the economic issue, the social upheaval, starvation, whatever it is, it's really all about a burning ground experience. And in my own opinion, I don't think that we've hit the hottest coals yet. And there are three categories of people in the world in terms of their relationship to the burning ground that humanity now walks across. Three categories of people. There are some people who are intuitively very spiritually oriented. They're actually saying that they see the future and they sense that this burning ground is worth it because in the distance they can sense there's a promising future, a golden opportunity, and they yearn for it, and they say they trust that it's there because they sense that beyond these hot coals there's dew-laden grass, and it's cool, feels good on the feet, we'll get there. And then there's another group of people. And instead of looking this way, they're walking, and this is the masses, by the way, and this is the largest number of people. They're walking across the hot coals, and they see suffering in the world, and they feel their own pain, whether it's economic pain, social pain, whatever it is, huge amounts of pain, and all they know is that their feet are burning. And they know that their feet weren't burning back there. That they know too. And so there's a huge percentage of people that are doing a 180 return, and they're moving back as fast as they can because that's what they remember. And that's why you have a surge in conservative thinking around the world, because they don't sense the dew-laden grass on the other side, and they're running. And in that run, in that retreat, there's a polarity that's building right in the middle of it, and that actually makes the coals even hotter. But then there's a third group. And the third group is the group that I'm most interested in. And it's the group that the esoteric philosophy is trying to inspire and provide ideation that supports the way of looking at it. It's a group of people that say, yes, I see that vision. I see that vision. I agree with that. That's the way to go. But they're different than the first group in this sense. The first group is saying, yes, let's go that way and forget you. You guys, forget you. But the third group says, no, we can't forget them. They stand in the middle. They're at the bridge. They say, yes, there's the vision. But we're all one. We can't reject that. We have to carry it with us. The last weary pilgrim must come home. So in a certain sense, they make this gesture. And that's what I submit is the nature of service today. The nature of service today, the nature of purpose today, from a spiritual perspective, is to be the bridge. To be the bridge between the vision of the future and the habits of the past. You know, it has been said that most of the problems of the world are just it's a battle between the future and the past. It's a battle between new ideation and the habitual relationship we have with old ideas. In the esoteric philosophy, there's something called the ancient fires. The ancient fires, it's kind of an arcane language, but the idea is, what is the ancient fires? The ancient fires represent the power inherent in old ideas. And it's the ancient fires that are pulling that second group to run back. It worked in the past, it must work in the future. That's the attitude. Everybody with me? You folks with me? But this is the exciting thing is this, that because we're walking across the burning ground, and there's this tremendous possibility of a new and dawning humanity, I just think it's so fantastic that there's all this world crisis. Isn't that great? I mean, think about it. Think about it. I mean, how, if we don't, look, you've got to, let's use the economic problem as an example. We've recently seen the tremendous abuse of resources by some of the wealthiest people in the world. It's really become very obvious to us. But those people were there all along, but they were under the radar. They were part of the shadow of humanity. But now, through a variety of forces, all of those shadow issues are rising up in defiance. Guess what? We get to see it. How lovely. We get to see it. And how can we change anything unless we see it? That's why it's so wonderful that all of these difficulties that humanity faces now are in our view. Fantastic. So that brings me then to your role in this, and your place within the big scheme. Because, as I mentioned, ideally it's about being a bridge. And it's about being an advocate of the new ideas, being an advocate of the soul of humanity as it seeks to impress itself and infuse itself into the personality of humanity. That's what this is really about. And what is the force that's triggering all of this shadow stuff to the surface that I said is something to be excited about? What is the force? It's that very force itself. You see, we could say that the soul of humanity is a great Christ force. And as it infuses itself into, it's trying now to infuse more of itself into the personality of humanity. And what's happening is shadow issues are jarred loose and rise to the surface. It's so interesting. Love forces separateness to the surface. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Now, in this philosophy, it's understood that your soul is a great agent of the soul of humanity, and it's a great agent of Christ. Both Christ as when we speak of the Christ, but also Christ as it pertains to the Christ, that energy of the soul of humanity, and beyond that, the cosmic Christ. Christ is a relative term. But that it's understood that your soul, though always an agent of Christ, there are 7 types of souls. 7 unique ways soul consciousness is driven to serve humanity. Now, in this philosophy, they're called the 7 ray types. And what I thought I'd do today is to share with you a little bit about each of them, to give you a feel of these ray types. Because in a way, to know your soul ray, to know the ray that your causal body is upon, is to know the very reason for your being and what your role in the world is. To give you a simple understanding of the 7 rays, let's look at it this way. Imagine that God is white light. And indeed, we hear about the light of God. Imagine that one life, therefore, is white light. But as that white light projects itself in and as cosmos, it's like going through a prism. And it fragments itself into 7 colors of the visible spectrum, and each of those is, by analogy, a ray. And that you, as a soul, not as a personality, but as a soul, are found upon one of those rays. And to know your soul ray is to know the reason for your being and how to serve. So I would like to give you just a quick overview of the 7 types. Now, you're going to find as I go through this that you're going to kind of resonate with several of them. Because your personality is also is on a ray line, and so is your mental body and your emotional body. But one of them is the root. One of them is the most fundamental quality to your spiritual nature. And so I'd like you to kind of be okay with recognizing all of them in you, but be alert to which one resonates most with you in the deepest, subtlest place. In the deeper place. Okay, so let's start with the first ray. A first ray soul is called the first ray is called the ray of will and power. And people who are on the path who are first ray people are people that have an inclination towards spiritual leadership. It's a very strong way. It's interesting. A lot of times people think that the word will and power aren't spiritual, but in the esoteric philosophy, those words are as spiritual as love. It's a different dimension of divinity. By the way, these rays are equal. I should mention this. They're equal in their inherent value. But there are some spiritual people whose divine mandate is to bring forth will, not will that is all about not self-will, but the will of the greater life. And sometimes it even manifests as destruction. They're sometimes called the destroyers, but it's not destruction for its own sake. It's destruction on behalf of a higher construction. When a person is awake to their soul and they're on the first ray, these are people that are inclined to work in executive positions. They find their way into leadership positions. Some of the most advanced people you'll find will be, who are awake, would be in leadership positions within corporations or government. Actually, believe it or not, government is the manifestation of the first ray. Oh, I should mention that too. It's another side point. Social institutions are manifestations of these rays as well. And whatever your soul ray is, you will have an inclination or an interest that will unconsciously gravitate you toward those institutions or those outer fields of endeavor that are of similar vibration. So many politicians are first-rate people. And occasionally you'll find one that's awake to it. Okay. Second ray is called the ray of love and wisdom. People are on this particular ray line. Their soul nature is very committed to bringing the feeling of inclusivity into the world. It's a building ray. People on this line are inclined toward education. And indeed, in every culture, the urge to learn, the urge to teach, those are inherently second-ray manifestations. It's also the ray that governs the whole healing profession. And so second-ray souls, actually, they're in great numbers these days. Oh, I should mention that these types of souls are not in equal proportion in the world. Each soul, each ray, back up. Each soul type is part of a great inner ashram. There's a first-ray ashram, second-ray ashram, third-ray ashram, and your soul, whatever ray you're on, your soul is a member of a great inner ashram. Now, ashram is a word that means spiritual home, and often when we think of ashram, we think about going to India or something like that. That's not really the ashram. That's an outer reflection, perhaps, but the real ashram is deep inside you, deep inside you. And your soul issues forth from that ashram, and that ashram has a purpose. That ashram has an intention. It has a piece of work to do in the world, and its purpose is your purpose. Its purpose is your purpose. But they're not in manifestation in equal proportions. The first ray and the second ray are quite strongly in incarnation at this time in human history. The third ray is called the ray of active intelligence and adaptability. Now, people that have souls along this vibrational line, or this quality of soul, go one of two ways. They often can go, or historically they have gone the philosophic way. So you take people like Kant, Spinoza, some of the great philosophers, Plato. These were great second-ray soul types. Third-ray soul types. But today, that particular ashram is very interested in economic affairs. This ashram is it emphasizes the intelligence principle of the Logos, whereas the second ray emphasizes the love principle of the Logos, and the first ray emphasizes the purposeful, willful nature of the Logos. And in a certain sense, the first, second, and third ray is the Trinity, from a certain perspective. Some of the most advanced people in the business world, some of the most advanced people on the path that I've ever met have been CEOs of corporations. And by the way, some of the least advanced have also been CEOs of corporations. I'll grant you that as well. Okay? And that ashram's responsibility in the big picture, what it needs to do, and it's engaging really strongly now because of the economic crisis, that ashram is committed to ultimately creating right distribution of resources to ensure the sustenance of all life on Earth. And no institution within the human domain is more savvy, more capable, more able to understand resource and its distribution. It's the business world. You know, a lot of people say that the problem with the world is that its business is the problem of the world. No, that's not right. It's not business that's the problem of the world. It's the lower nature of business that's the problem of the world. The problem of the world isn't politics. The problem is the personality nature of politics. You see, I'm now throwing in another principle. I want you to understand that social institutions are also entities, and they have a higher nature and a lower nature. And they are struggling between their higher and lower nature, just like you and I, just like you and I. No different, no different. So one of the things I'd like to highlight here is that we have to start looking at the world in a different way. And instead of making these blatant statements of this is where the darkness is, realize that everything out there is a mixture of dark and light. Everything. So there are some really, really advanced people in the world of business who are as far or farther on the path than you and I are. But they're coming along a different ray line than you and I, perhaps. And so it feels different. But it's just as sacred and just as needed. Every social institution has an essential role to play in the great drama of humanity as it develops itself into an effective throat center on behalf of the Logos, and indeed is evolving itself toward a higher order, a more perfect expression. The fourth ray. The fourth ray is called the ray of harmony through conflict. Now, this particular ashram is quite unique in the sense that it's the one ashram that isn't really yet in incarnation, we are told. Even though there are a lot of people that have fourth ray personalities and fourth ray minds. This particular, this is an ashram that it has a very unique role to play. Its role is to help humanity recognize that the harmonization of form through right relation of form is an expression of the divine. It's called harmony through conflict. And it's an ashram that we are told has a very short cycle in terms of its externalization and its abstraction, externalization and abstraction. The last time it incarnated, we are told, it's what launched the European Renaissance. People like Bach, Beethoven, Da Vinci, these were great fourth-ray souls. We're also given to understand that this particular ashram will begin to externalize itself after the year 2025. Although I think there's a few scouts out there. I have a feeling, okay. But nonetheless, I think the reason why this particular group of souls has a shorter cycle is because the whole human kingdom, in its singularity, is a fourth ray entity. See, the human kingdom is the fourth kingdom of nature. Where the first is the mineral, then the plant, then the animal, then the human. And so the fourth kingdom of nature, because it's the fourth, it's ruled innately by the fourth ray. And what is that ray called? The ray of harmony through conflict. By the way, did you know, I didn't say harmony and conflict. Harmony through conflict. It's the conflict between, but the outer conflict that we have as a species, the outer conflict we experience, that's just an externalization of the more fundamental conflict inherent in the human condition, to be human. It's the conflict between our soul and personality, between the higher part of us and our lower part. Or as Kyle Gibran would say in The Prophet, between the God within us and the pygmy in the mist. The fifth ray ashram. The fifth ray ashram is also quite strong right now. It's called the ray of concrete knowledge and science. People whose causal bodies are conditioned by this quality, whose soul nature is conditioned by this quality, are very drawn to the world of science. Many, many advanced fifth ray souls are working in science, in medicine, in scientific investigation. To give you a broader sense of what this type of soul is seeking to contribute to the human condition, it's called the ray that clarifies truth. It's a very mental expression of truth, but it cuts. Its role is to help humanity see clearly that which is true from that which only seems to be true. Think about the scientist who says, oh, that's an interesting hypothesis you have here, but it is a hypothesis, we got to check it out. So they go through a whole scientific process to sort it out. Is it true, or does it just seem to be true? Not all fifth ray souls are scientists, but what I'm saying is that think of these rays as qualities, as characteristics of thought, patterns of perception, and think of them as all having something to do with contributing to humanity's upliftment through adding its quality to our collective evolution. And the fifth ray has a huge role to play in that. Huge role. And particularly given the fact that the sign of Aquarius is a fifth ray sign. Oop, I just went on another tangent. Astrology, all signs of the zodiac are transmitters, we are told, as background vibrations of all of these seven rays. And Aquarius happens to be very connected to the fifth ray. So the fifth ray is also very strong in today's culture. Now, the sixth ray is called the ray of idealism and devotion. Idealism and devotion. Now, there's a lot of sixth ray souls in the world, but this particular ashram, we are told, is beginning its abstraction. Why? Because it's been associated with the sign of Pisces. And Pisces, we're at the end of the Piscean cycle. And what does it mean to be a sixth ray soul? Is the soul that has a strong devotional relationship to divinity. It's a very love-based quality, but it's love that is aimed. Let me put it to you another way. There's a similarity between a second ray soul and a sixth ray soul in this sense. A second ray soul loves, but love is felt like this. It's sort of like love of the one, a kind of even collective support of the all. Whereas the sixth ray also feels love, but it takes love and does this. It narrows it down and says, that's the thing to be loved. Devote to, an ideal. So sixth ray, that type of soul wants to point love in a particular direction. It's why the sixth ray rules all theology. That's the institution it rules. It also is governing all causations. That is to say, when I say causations, I mean fighting for a cause. Many people who are sixth ray souls are committed to things like saving the whales, or committing to going to Africa to help in the problem of starvation. Even in the environmental movement, you have lots of sixth ray souls and you have a lot of fifth ray souls. The fifth ray soul is the soul that's saying, here is what's going on with the environment, here is how we are damaging the environment, here is the proof of it from a scientific perspective. And the sixth ray soul is trying to fight the issue by doing things like, chaining themselves to a tree. And both are legitimate. Both are legitimate. But the sixth ray is an ashram that's abstracting. It's pulling out. It's at the end of its cycle. And many, many of the problems today that we see in the world are because of that abstraction. Because at the end of a cycle of anything, you have more crystallization. Just like a human life, you're born, you grow into adolescence, adulthood, but when there's more rigidity and less flexibility at the end of any life cycle. So you get what is called an increase in the glamours associated with a ray type. Now, glamour is a word that means here it represents distortion. And so there's a huge, huge factor here as we move into this transition into a new age. There's a huge factor having to do with the abstraction of the sixth ray ashram and the distortions that arise from it. And one of the biggest distortions is the rise in fundamentalism in every theology. Fundamentalism is an aberration of the sixth ray. Fundamentalist thinking is filled with glamorous distortions. That's why in every theology, the fastest growing branch of that theology is the fundamentalist branch. You can sure see it in America. We've got this Bible Belt that's amazing. I don't know if you have fundamentalism here. Yeah, I'm just kidding. I'm sure you do. But it's got a lot of dangers to it. And this afternoon, I'm going to be doing a workshop entitled Humanity's Dawning Hour, and I'm going to go into a deeper look at that. But I just want to highlight that the sixth ray and its abstraction is all part of this. It's also why America is going to go through a difficult time. It is going through a difficult time because, here's another twist for you, countries are beings. Great Britain is a being. It too has a soul. It too has a personality. It too is struggling between its higher and lower nature. And so is America. Every country is. But these countries are also, as souls and personalities, are animated by different qualities or rays. And America happens to have a sixth ray personality. And so many of the difficulties that America is facing right now is because the sixth ray is at the end of its cycle and is causing tremendous issues around how to reorganize our culture, our society. You have a different game. You have a second-ray soul and a first-ray personality. I better not go down that road. I'll save that for this afternoon. It's an interesting. Yeah, better not go down that road. Okay. How much time do I have? The seventh ray is called the ray of ceremonial order and magic. Ooh, where'd that come from? Now, the seventh ray is an interesting ray because it's all about bringing heaven to earth, and we've been talking about that. We've heard that phrase a few times at this conference. You see, the seventh ray doesn't actually govern any particular institution, but it's what makes all the others successful. It's the great manifesting ray. The seventh ray people are people when they're on the path again, because keep in mind, everything I'm telling you is under the assumption that a person has woke up to their soul, whereas in a sense the masses have not, so keep that in mind. But the seventh ray is all about facilitating a great motion, a great transition from what has been called the way of the mystic to the way of the practical mystic. And that's what we're moving into. We're moving into an age of practical mysticism. The capacity to reach for the stars but keep your feet on the ground and really build a new world, build it true to type, reorganize how we function in a practical way in the outer world. This seventh ray is very important today because it's the ray that also has a tremendous relationship to humanity's approach to the first initiation. Indeed, it rules the first initiation. So I will get into that also this afternoon in much more detail. But that's a way that you can start thinking about your purpose, think about it in terms of these 7 types of qualities, and then look deep inside you, feel it, and sense which of those feels vibrationally most true to who I am in the ultimate sense. And sometimes the ray that you will recognize is the one that people will see it in you, but only after they get to know you a bit. When they first meet you, they actually recognize your personality ray, because that's persona, that's what you're putting out there. But in a deeper way, in a deeper, subtler place, your soul ray is there. Now, I'm just giving you, this is a huge subject, and each ray, I could spend a whole day on each one, okay? So obviously I've had to be very tight with all of this, but one other way to help you understand that is ask yourself this question. Of the qualities of the 7 rays that I've just shared with you, those initial qualities, can you identify one of them that seems to be getting stronger as you get older? Be alert to that. Because from this philosophic perspective, it's understood that your personality ray will have a stronger dominance in the early part of the life, but if you're on the path and waking up and having soul infusion taking place, that soul ray is going to be precipitating more and more and more into the fabric of your consciousness. So ask yourself that question. My last point in this, and then I can open it up for questions if we have time, and that is this, that I have found in my work, I teach in many countries and I have many students and many people I've done one-on-one counseling with as well. And everybody's looking for the purpose. Everybody. Everybody wants to know, what is my spiritual purpose? It's probably the most universal question that is asked of me, as if I could tell them. I can't possibly tell them what their purpose is in terms of specificity. I can talk about it in terms of quality, but one of the things that I find people are disturbed about when it comes to purpose is that we tend to think of purpose as something like this, like a straight arrow, that my purpose is that. My purpose is to walk that way and do that thing. Well, there are some people that's true, absolutely. There are some people that innate in the fabric of their consciousness, their structure, their dharma is set up for that very thing. But I actually don't think that that's the most common expression of purpose. I think what I find more common in the spiritual community is not purpose like this, but I'm going to give you another gesture that represents purpose, another kind of purpose. Instead of this, it's this. It's about look, being the best you can be in any situation, being the best you can be in every circumstance, bringing your love, your wisdom, your insight in everything you do. And at the same time, follow your interests. You know, a great master was once asked in India, Master, how can I know my spiritual purpose? And the response was very interesting. The response was this: follow the trend of your thinking. Follow the trend of your thinking in your high moments, when you're thinking about life, the world, what it needs, the circumstances that we face in this world, and what your mind always wants to go back to over and over and over again as an underlying theme, because in the middle of that trend of thought is a golden thread, and that's it. Joseph Campbell once said, made famous the phrase, follow your bliss. You've all heard that. Esotericism would modify that slightly and say, follow the trend of thought that tends to evoke bliss in you. And there's your answer. On that note, I'm open to taking any questions. I think I just have a couple minutes, but are there any questions you'd like to ask? Okay.
Just a simple one. How do the colours tie up with the rays?
Yep. There's a direct correspondence between the rays and colors, and also notes. You know, the 7 rays are. Even though we have an octave, there are really 7 notes. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Do is repeated twice. They're connected to the 7 notes of music. They're connected to the 7 chakras. They're connected to the 7 rishi lords that you find in Hinduism. It's very connected to the archangels. It's very connected to, these are metaphors within theology that try to get at the same thing. You can even be tied into the 7 days of creation within Christianity. It's also connected to atomic structure, the atom. An atom has, do you remember the old periodic table? If you were like me, I tried to forget it as quickly as I could. But there was 7 periods in the periodic table, which are measures of, each period has to do with shells of orbiting electrons. There are 7 potential shells of orbiting electrons. You see the septenary nature right at the level of atomic substance itself. So we see it. The number 7 is just woven into many things. That's why 7 is such a sacred number in many cultures, and actually it does well in Las Vegas too, and that's another story. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Yes, my question was also relating to the 7. You mentioned a couple of the astrological signs. Would you be able just to go through the 7?
You mean and tell you this, where the rays for each sign?
Yeah.
I don't know if I have enough time there. Each ray, there are 7 rays, 12 signs. Each ray finds a gate through 3 signs. So some signs have 1 ray, some manifest 2, and there are a couple that manifest 3 rays. I think that would take me too long to do, because I think I just got a couple. That would take me about 10 minutes to really do that right. I'm sorry, I can't do that. But if you corner me out there someplace, I'd be happy to run that through you. What's the sign you're interested in? Let me just ask that. What are you interested in? What sign? Give me a sign. What's your sign? Leo. Leo, okay. Leo. Okay. I'm a Leo too, so I know. I understand. I understand. We'll talk later. Okay. Let's go to...
This might be a big question too, but given that these 2 days, the final 2 days, are sort of about, use the word coming out, but what we're doing now. You've mentioned England, Great Britain being, kind of the 1 and the 2. It was about what is the purpose and in essence of this country, this land in this time, if you can touch on that at all. I know that's a big one too. You're doing something after tea, aren't you, as well?
Well, this is going to be part of my conversation at the afternoon presentation.
Yeah, so just for everyone, though, if there's an essence.
Well, it's an essence. You have a second ray soul. Second ray is the ray of inclusivity, wisdom, tolerance, harmony through diversity, honoring of diversity, oneness through diversity, second ray manifestations, all of them. And so does America, by the way. The United States has a second ray soul as well. But we have a sixth ray personality. You have a first ray personality. But the soul ray of both of our countries is the same. And that's why in the deepest soul level, my country and your country are brothers. At the highest level, but our personality natures are quite different. Your first ray is will and power, which is what accounts for your history and the emphasis on empire building. America is sixth ray, idealism and devotion. And that's why religion is so strong in America. That's why the founding fathers had a lot of emphasis on a new set of ideals. And also, in a certain sense, it's what has, in some sense, the pioneering tendencies of America, willing to try anything new. That has a lot to do with the sixth ray. It served us well, just as the first ray has served you well. But now, your country and my country are waking up to its deeper second ray responsibility. And that second ray is trying to infuse itself in the first ray. That's why your country is going through some wrenching difficulties too. Anyway, that's a quick answer, but anyway, yeah, I'll stop. Okay. One more, okay.
Well, I was just wondering about Holland.
About what?
About the Netherlands. Yeah, it's just my curiosity.
Yeah, I can't do that. I got a lot of countries here. I can't, it's
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Actually, I'm not sure the rays in the Netherlands. Sorry. The eighth ray, I'm sure. I'm just joking. The Netherlands, it's got to be the eighth ray. That's it? I think, Andrew wanted it too, but I've just been told that I must stop. So I will be doing a meditation after tea break that will try to align us with the ashram. So, we're good? Okay.
Good.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks.